Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Good afternoon and
уважаемые друзья.
welcome, dear
Наша
colleagues, dear
сегодняшняя
friends.
сессия посвящена
Our
теме
today's
бесшовной
session
рельсы цифровизации,
will
возможно
be
ли это.
dedicated to
Конечно,
seamless
после той дискуссии,
digitalization. We're
которая
going to discuss
была
whether it is
на пленарной
possible.
сессии, была посвящена
After the
метавселенной,
plenary
достаточно
session,
сложно
where
говорить о
panelists
рельсах, потому
discussed
что рельсы — это из
matter
прошлого.
universe, it's difficult to even
С другой стороны,
discuss
если мы не
something as
поймем, как нам
obsolete as
строить
the beaten
настоящее,
track,
вряд ли
because this is the
мы
metaphor that is
окажемся в
used
той
in Russian.
метавселенной или в
But
тех
unless we figure
метавселенных,
this
в
out,
которых мы,
unless
как
we
люди,
understand
хотели
whether
бы оказаться
seamless
через 3, 5,
digitalization
10,
is possible,
15
it is
лет.
unlikely we'll end up
Поэтому
in a
мы
matter
сегодня с
universe
нашими
in 5, 10, maybe
уважаемыми
15
коллегами
years.
поговорим о
Therefore,
том,
today, we're
что
going to
мы уже
discuss
как
with our
государство
outstanding
и как финансовая
panelists
отрасль
the following subject.
сделали
What
в
is it
плане
that we as a state
инфраструктуры и тех
and as a
решений,
financial
которыми мы
sector have already
пользуемся,
achieved
что
in
нам не
terms of
удалось,
infrastructure, in terms of
и
digital
что мы хотим
solutions,
сделать
where are
для
we
того,
still
чтобы
falling behind, and what is
жизнь
yet to be
метавселенных
done
была для
to
нас
make sure
счастливой,
that we'll
а не
live
просто
happily ever
цифровой.
after in matter
Я
universes.
представлю своих коллег,
So allow me
которые
to
вместе
start
со
by
мной сегодня будут
introducing
вести эту сессию.
my
Maksut,
fellow
Shadayev,
speakers,
министр
Maksut,
цифрового
Shadayev,
развития связи и
Minister of
массовых
Digital
коммуникаций,
Development, Communications and Mass Media,
Владимир Верхошинский,
Vladimir
глава
Verkhoshinskiy,
Альфа-Банка,
head
Раби
of
Shankar,
Alfa-Bank,
заместитель
Rabi
председателя
Shankar,
Резервного банка
Deputy
Индии,
Governor of the Reserve Bank
Georgy,
of India,
Горшков, генеральный
Georgy
директор
Gorshkov,
страховой компании Tyumen-Polis,
CEO of Tyumen-Polis Insurance
и
Company,
Ovasapyan, это генеральный
and
директор
Vahe
OZON Fintech.
Ovasapyan,
И,
OZON
наверное,
Fintech
мой первый
CEO.
вопрос к
So my
моему
first question
партнеру
goes to my
по тем инфраструктурным проектам, которые мы делаем на
partner
уровне государства,
in infrastructure
к
project,
Maksutу.
Maksut. We
Мы
work
много
together at the state level,
декларировали
and
последние
we
5 лет.
And over the past 5 years, we as government, as the Central Bank of Russia,
делаем для разных отраслей, финансовых и нефинансовых, где мы видим участие непосредственно государства, почему мы делаем государственные платформы. При этом мы уже находимся в 2021 году, и нам точно есть возможность подвести итоги. Но самое главное, я хочу акцентировать свой вопрос на том, что министерство видит как первоочередные задачи в ближайшие 3 года? Если говорить, например, о таких проектах, которые мы задумали и сделали, как цифровой профиль физического лица, как НСПК, как СБП, рынок, люди и бизнес доказали, что это востребовано и нужно. Тем не менее, у нас, например, в 2018 году был начат проект «Единая биометрическая система». Мы возлагали огромные надежды, и мы, и бизнес, потому что идентификация упрощалась, и мы бы имели возможность онлайн представлять и финансовые, и
facilitated identification, and we could provide online financial and non-financial services. But this project's been slow in implementation. So what is it we need to do at this point in time to make sure we don't just create this platform, because the foundation has been laid and the platform is there, but we need to move it forward. And the second question, what is currently happening with the public with GovStack platform, because the ministry said a few times that this GovStack platform will allow to create a single window for all the public services, and this is exactly the kind of a good example of seamless transition that people need, that the corporate community needs, and this is what sometimes we lack. So what's happening with GovStack? Is there any progress? And do you think what should people and the business community expect in the 2022? Should the unified biometric system and GovStack platform develop rapidly? Thank you, Olga. Thank you for the invitation. This is the first time I take part in this forum in Plenary. And I would like to start by saying that financial services and banks are setting very good pace and lead by example in terms of very good approach to digitalization. And we thank the Bank of Russia for leading many very important projects such as digital profile and unified biometric system. And it's good that you are a forerunner and you push us to be proactive, change and adapt. And we thank you for that. We're not always successful. You mentioned digital profile. This project was launched in 2019. This year, I believe we can say that we've made it happen. According to the latest statistics, our users consented 8 million times to provide access to banks for the information that's available in the public information systems, which facilitated all the paperwork on banks' websites and also facilitated bank checks. And this statistics relate to only 18 months because the system was launched in 2020. Nonetheless, both individuals and banks sometimes complain that they don't always get full access to all those online services. I mean, they are there, but sometimes you have to wait, sometimes they're not available at this moment, and you have to reconnect and try again next day. I mean, do you understand that access should be rapid and seamless? Otherwise, individuals and legal entities will not be interested. Like I said, Fintech is really leading by example. If we look at what's happening, even if the federal law, it states that any ministry or agency has 5 days to provide information on request. Well, but we need to push because we want to get data real-time online. Exactly. This is why we launched this big online program. The idea is to make sure that all ministries and agencies provide data online on request of legal entities or individual users, and many ministries and agencies are already introducing these online systems. Ministry of Interior was first, Rosregister, registry of ownership rights is going digital. So I would likely to see any results in 2022. Yes, indeed, in the first quarter, Rosregister will be launching their online platform, and they will provide all information to users on ownership rights, to users that have digital signatures. So it already makes life easier for people because the information that is available on the public information services can be obtained and shared in a very user-friendly format. But this is not the end of it. You asked a very good very good question about unified biometric system. It's a very ambitious project which has already been launched, and right now we are reconsidering it because we have the technical platform in place, and last year a law was passed under which biometric identification in the system is equivalent to an ID of a citizen, which is unique in many ways. Indeed, it's probably the only project where a legislation was adopted before infrastructure was put in place. Usually it's the other way around. First, the infrastructure is created, and then it takes us time to pass laws or amend legislation. In this case, relevant legislation was adopted in 2020, and now all services can be provided remotely, but we need to put the unified biometric system in place. Well, the technical infrastructure is in place. Now users need to be encouraged to provide their biometric data. Now we need to make sure that we encourage citizens to register and provide their biometric data. As of June 1st, we've launched electronic SIM cards, and we see that people are interested and the interest is growing. Second is we need to simplify the procedure of submitting biometric data. We've discussed it with banks, and now we've come up with a set of amendments that would allow users to submit the biometric data through an app without physically visiting a branch. only limited scope of services will be provided to users that have submitted the biometric data electronically, but you can also get authorized through public services website, and a lot of discussion is happening that we need to protect individual records better. So we're considering a two-factor authentication, so a combination of biometric data and authentication through public services. Another option is QR codes. There's a lot of debate going on right now. You need to show your passport once you present your QR code. Wouldn't it be easier to use your biometric data and show your QR code to get access to a restaurant or any entity that requires them? Yes, we're now trying to simplify the procedure of submitting one's biometric data, make sure people don't have to physically attend offices or branches, make it seamless. But how will we manage this project? I mean, it's no secret to anyone that a prerequisite for a success of any project is a good team and proper management. We've had a lot of discussion on that matter. So did you come to any solution? Well, biometric is becoming a key identification technology, the most relevant these days. So this project is currently implemented by Rostelecom. Probably it should be managed by a public company where the government will have relevant powers to manage the technology. So we're shifting towards a more public system, or maybe through a public company. One of the key functions of the state is to identify authenticate individuals. And if we use biometric data for authentication, the state should be in charge. But it's also very important to make sure that banks and other stakeholders are still able to use various elements of the system for their own systems, to use technological solutions, because this sector is growing really rapidly, and we need to keep track of all developments. This is what our president mentioned in his speech during a forum dedicated to artificial intelligence. He said that the state should be in control, but at the same time we need to make sure that users have full control of private data, to consent or revoke consent to use this data, whether it's a bank or an insurance company or a public institution. It doesn't matter. Users should be in control, and we need to make sure that this procedure is seamless. So all initial data should be stored on one platform and be properly protected. And all services should be provided seamlessly without any threats. So this is our priority task. A few words about publicly owned platforms such as Gostech. We've been discussing it for 2 years now. What has been achieved so far, and what are the plans for 2020? Gostech has a platform. There's a large project in the pipeline. 3 agencies are implementing their own projects on Gostech platform. It's a pilot project. The first project is aimed at simplifying, creating bespoke solutions for agencies, because we cannot linger, we cannot wait for 2 or 3 years for a launch of a system. So Gostech is a platform where public ministries and agencies would be able to launch their own digital platforms. And most ministries and agencies are expecting to receive some sort of a ready-made product they could use and incorporate operate immediately. So we've come up with the idea of a public market where various institutions, public institutions at the municipal and federal level could use and connect to this platform and then seamlessly use existing services without investment in development. If we look at our management, public administration system, some functions are unique, such as central bank or tax authorities, but there are many functions that are very similar in different regions, for instance, at the municipal level. So to avoid duplication, to make sure resources are used efficiently, it would be best to allow them to simply connect to model services. My next question goes to Rabi. India was one of the pioneer countries.
Где национальная инфраструктура сразу начала развиваться очень активно. Всем известна ваша система Aadhaar, которая начиналась с идентификации. Мы знаем, что вы делаете еще платформы KYC, мы знаем, что вы делаете платформы мгновенных платежей. Раби, скажите, пожалуйста, во-первых, по какому принципу вы выбираете, что должно делать государство или центральный банк как национальную
what should be done by the state or the central bank as part of national infrastructure?
Вы планируете охватить,
and what other areas are you planning to cover by infrastructure designed at the national level?
Okay, let me try and answer that briefly, Olga. The basic requirements for digitalization would be universal availability of a digital identity, which can be used to authenticate transactions and activities, universal access to devices, universal access to a network and therefore connectivity, and availability of normal technological solutions. The approach taken in India is that the state or the public sector either on its own or at its initiative, would provide the basic infrastructure that is required on which the private sector can innovate and create payment solutions for the entire citizenry or the population. The India stack, that was being referred to is essentially a set of open and interoperable infrastructure systems with various layers, with a cashless layer, with a paperless layer, with a presenceless layer, and so on. Now, this is the infrastructure based on which other products can be developed. Now, I'll give you an example of the Universal Payments Interface, the UPI system, which is almost near real-time fast payment system, that was developed about 5-6 years ago. That is a very good example of how the private sector and the state can combine together to provide a product that almost everyone can use. But what we need to understand and remember is that the basic requirements for this, which is authentication, is provided by Aadhaar, which is a national identity platform which can be used for biometric authentication as well. Initially Aadhaar started off as something that will help in making government payments smooth and targeted and without any leakages. Now, over the years, while that use has always, that use is being met, it has actually evolved into something much bigger than that for the entire payment ecosystem. So that is an initiative where virtually the entire population, about 1.3 billion odd accounts exist. So almost everyone can be identified. The other is a state initiative to ensure that almost everyone in the population has a basic bank account. Now, that is essential because UPI is essentially a transfer of money from one bank account to another bank account. So having those bank accounts was also extremely important. And third is penetration of mobile devices. Now in India we call them JAM Trinity, Jandan, which is universal accounts, Aadhaar, which is the authentication and identity platform, and the mobile system that we have. Now since all these three existed, it became very easy for private sector to come in and innovate on their products. Now UPI is a product which is a transfer from bank to bank, but private sector players like Google or like PhonePe or many others have basically ridden on these platforms and used the access that they have to customers, and they have got products which make it very easy for customers for onboarding and for doing the transactions. Now, as a result, what has happened is that we can make extremely low value transactions at extremely fast pace. I would probably end by saying that while the state is required to provide the infrastructure for any digitalization to proceed in an organized manner, the innovation in terms of products and innovation in terms of efficiency and reduction of cost largely must come from the private sector. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you.
На самом деле всегда отрадно видеть, что
It's always a pleasure
мы,
to see that
делая свои проекты,
as we launch our project, even when we don't coordinate, we find the same priorities for the state and for the business community. Judging by what you say, it looks like we're on the same page. You've created this rapid payment system, the state is in charge of identification. We don't have a mobile payment system yet, but probably we will need to put that in place, and Mr. Shadayev will think of that. As for mobile devices, in our country, many people have more than one mobile device, but I think we need to again consider creating a national mobile devices.
Равный доступ всем участникам, это ключевое.
And in terms of priorities, equal access is very important.
Это то, ради чего мы тоже считаем необходимо делать национальные инфраструктурные проекты.
And I think they are indeed priorities, and this is precisely why we need to work on national projects. My next question goes to Vladimir. Alfa-Bank is one of the most innovative in Russia.
Нестандартных сервисов, ориентированных именно на желание и чувствование человека. И мы видим, насколько сильно поменялась стратегия банка за последние 5 лет.
And we've seen a lot of change in the strategy of the bank over the past 5 years.
И вы оказались крайне оригинальны.
We're keeping track of your plans, and I think
единственный банк, который сказал, что
you really are different because you are the only bank that said we're not going to
даже не суперап,
create an ecosystem.
We're
going to create a financial super service, which is more than a super app. And you said that you believe that it's a good way forward, that this is the right thing to do. And you decided to focus on this
При этом хотелось бы понять, а вам вот в этом таком одиночном великом пути вам все-таки партнерство с другими игроками и взаимодействие с государственными инфраструктурными решениями нужно? Или вы считаете, что вы в принципе справитесь сами?
Thank you very much for inviting me, for the warm comments. Yes, indeed, we have a strategy, a path of our own. I think in the professional community, the term ecosystem has run its course. It's an obsolete term, whereas super app is more innovative. Super app or a super service. In simple terms, a super app, it's about going broad. Pharmacies, financial services, deliveries, and everything at a high level. Yes, the quality should be high, but we We'll talk about that later. So we go broader. And in our particular case, this is also about going deeper. Usually the Achilles heel of super apps is the quality of client services. You've got to be excellent in pharmacies, in deliveries, in financial services, in banking services. And all of us know that the more tasks, the more objectives you've got, then the more difficult it's going to be for the project to succeed. Well, of course, a lot depends on the persons, and we understand some can do everything very well, but we understand that we cannot do it like this, so we want to concentrate on the financial track. We would like to provide our client with the up-to-date products, relevant products, timely, very aptly for the client's needs. Many would argue that super apps have an advantage because they work with a very big chunk of data, different types of data. But this is just a short-term competitive edge, whereas in the midterm, in 3 or 5 years, I think data are going to be increasingly accessible to different players, not just to the companies that possess them. And I think these data are going to be also available to the clients themselves. And then this competitive edge is going to fade into oblivion. As for partnerships, yes, it is very important for us to have a partnership, because if we can't provide something to our clients, then we would like to partner up with the best players in the market. We've just set up a voice assistance system. We teamed up with Just Ride and with Yandex. They have very good units working on that, and I think it's cheaper and more efficient. So the main principle is to integrate with the best ones. So yes, you team up with the best players in this or that field, and this gives you a chance to provide a very good package of services, whereas you, on yourself, concentrate on your own path. Yes, during the previous plenary session, Peter Avin has said that, yes, they've got different apps. Yes, you can get, 5, 6 apps, different apps. There are no barriers in that sense. And that's why we want to team up with the best ones. Whereas, of course, the government is working also on services. We've got no complaints about what the government provides us with. There are 38 services we can get access to, and it's all going forth and developing right now. So this is an example of what the government is doing. The state, the Central Bank of Russia, for the sake of digital revolution, providing access, equal access to all players. And if you're unable to make good use of that, then you'll lag behind. Well, yes, still, Maksut and I, we've got to work a lot more on seamless financial services provided by the state. We are not resting on our laurels, far be it from us. But do I understand it correctly that the infrastructure projects we are working on, you're working on, are relevant for the market, are in demand? On the one hand, the government has to provide security, safety, and access to everyone, but at the same time, we've got to, give margin of maneuver for the businesses. Do you think there are some distortions, or are we able to strike the balance? I think, yes, you are doing that. I think Rabi has mentioned that today. So the government is setting up a platform, and then the citizens and private companies can hook up to this platform and find out how to use that more efficiently, use the rapid payment system, the authentication system, and others. And I think what you're doing, the unified biometric system in particular, constitutes a very good platform to push forth the digital development. My next question goes to you. I want to ask you about data. Historically, either companies or banks are in possession of data, so they compile data on the customer, on his or her behavior, on what's happening. And the question is whether the data should belong to to the company or to the bank. Usually it's done with our consent. We sign off this consent document, but we do not know how these data are used, and we cannot withdraw our consent. And de facto, we do not manage, we do not handle our own data, whereas this is a value, this is my property, and I would like to have control over that. You are one of the biggest players in e-commerce, and incidentally, as far as I understand, you've decided to venture into the financial sphere as well. You've recently acquired a bank, as far as I know. So what do you think? How should we go about these data about a person, from the point of view of the citizen and from the point of view of the business? And my second question, why did you decide to buy a bank? You could wait for the regulation. We are planning to introduce new agents, non-banking providers of financial services. Well, we would provide you with a license, put you on the register, started to oversee your activities. Only thing you had to do was wait a little bit more. Why buy a bank? How do you plan to compete with the well-established players in this field? Let me start from your second question. Yes, it's the easiest one. My first reason is as follows. The main reason, time. Because time is the most valuable resource, and we are always trying to optimize the use of time. As you have pointed out, the regulation is not yet there, whereas we've already acquired a bank, so we've managed to address the issue of time. Secondly, we understand how the ecosystem works. The more responsibilities you assume, the more rights you have. The universal banking license provides you with more obligations, but at the same time it confers upon you more rights. In our particular case, our market is evolving very rapidly. And we understand that having access to a universal license, we can be more flexible about our strategy, and that's why we've decided to acquire a banking license. So it's not just time that you get and you benefit from, but also because you want to provide payment services, you have broader plans. You believe that having such a big database of clients, you can provide more services, payment services, of course. This is what we're pursuing, that's true. But at the same time, we understand that at a certain point of time, we might decide to provide our clients with more services, other services, and if we have this license, then it's possible. And that's why we decided to go for a universal, a general banking license. Now, moving on to your first question, which is more complicated. We are advocating open data. Yes, you are absolutely right. The data belong to the client. The client has the right to have control over the data about him or her. We are great proponents of this idea. We're also proponents of open app initiatives. So client is in control of his or her financial data, and he or she can provide consent for this data to be transferred to other company. And the rapid payment system is also about this very same thing. So, of course, the client has the money, but before the payment system, rapid payment system was set up, it was very difficult for a client to withdraw the money or to transfer it to another bank. Yes, sometimes it's still very difficult, but, if it's up to 100,000 rubles, then it's far easier. Yes, it's now easier and faster. And, the cornerstone of our bank is the rapid payment system. And it's going to permeate the very system, the very structure of our bank, our project. So we are proponents of everything that's related to open data. We believe the client has to have an opportunity to withdraw the money very fast, to transfer it, to have full control over it. Well, we've got an argument with the industry that is still raging on, because not everyone is happy about introducing APIs. Some believe that they have to be mandatory, others believe they should be voluntary. So what do you think? If we introduce API on a voluntary basis, will it work? Or what do you think? You know, if it's just a recommendation, don't you think that no one is gonna take notice of that? So what should it be? I believe some aspects, some actions have to be obligatory. The key ones, of course, and the rest should be a recommendation. I understand Vahe's position and OZON's position, as well as the position of new non-banking players who say that we need open API in business. So they say, let's ask for all data from the banks on a mandatory basis. No. We want the client to be able to decide whom to transfer the data to. Well, you know, I'm an advocate of open data, but it's more correct to speak not about open API, but about open data, so that the banks can get information about the customer basket, the consumer basket, maybe in an anonymized format. But we need common rules, and then it'll allow the client to choose. So it should be a two-way street, not a unilateral decision. And the same goes for operators. And if this is the path we decide to embark upon, then we've got to be smart about it. And then there should be a cross-exchange of data, not a one-way street when no one else reciprocates. Well, to be honest, for quite some time, the banking industry has seen this trend of transferring scoring data to be able to better assess the client. And for quite some time, banks and other industry players, telecom, they've been getting those data. But they had to pay for that. So, when we say that we are in favor of open data, you know, we are ready to pay for the data because we understand that collecting data involves costs. When data are open, but it doesn't mean they're free of charge. Yes, in terms of identification, that's true. But what about your data about the clients? Are you willing to provide these data to the financial sector so that it can use? I see, no, Open API has three levels. API can be at the financial market level, at the financial market level, as well as non-banking players. This is a broader concept of the first stage, as it were. And the third layer is open data. It's when you've got open standards and they provide a two-way street. The digital profile, you know, it's open API. Yes, what we discuss with Maksut right now is as follows. We believe that the right way to proceed is to open data, not just from the financial market, but also from the non-financial ones. But the question is what the pace should be, the speed, and whom to start from. We believe we should start from the biggest players, because we want to preserve competition. If we start with small and medium enterprises, they will simply disappear. So we believe we should start from the big ones, from the big players, and then it's gonna improve the competition, and then we'll proceed to small and medium enterprises. You know, when speaking about commercial interactions, Alfa-Bank can provide some data, get some money, and OZON as well. You know, there is a commercial foundation for that, the invisible hand of the market. Adam Smith spoke about will do the trick. What we are talking here is the obligation of banks or banking institutions to provide some information. And I agree that we shouldn't make it a blanket obligation. We have to think about the interests of our clients, of our customers, and we believe we have to look at a different range of players in the field. We'll get back to this topic because it's vital, it's burning, it's very topical, especially in the years to come. Georgy, you are a prominent player in the financial sector. You have very great expertise and experience, and all of a sudden you decided to venture into insurance. And as far as digitalization goes, so far insurance industry is lagging behind. It's very difficult to understand who is who, what the players are, what the level of competition is, and de facto you launched a startup. Yes, the company you work for is virtually a startup, even though it's been there for 28 years. And you were as bold as to invest your own money into this company when making this decision. What was your guiding principle? What is your rationale? Yes, thank you, Olga, very much for the invitation, for the opportunity to speak. This is a very good question. Why do that? As a financier, as an entrepreneur, I see that across the world, insurance industry is on the threshold of drastic change. We do not see that in Russia so far, but if we look at this digitalization train, Russia has not yet hopped on it. If we look at the insurance, insurance is lagging behind 2 decades across the world in terms of digitalization, in terms of new solutions, and clients suffer because the prices are higher and it's very inconvenient for the client. The only thing the insurance companies have learned how to do is to sell a policy once a year, and if something happens, they give them money. Insurance companies don't like to care for their customer. This technology, insurance, protection. Let's remember our childhood. When we were 6-year-old, our mother told us before we went outdoors to put on a hat because mother was trying to prevent us from catching a cold. When we were 16, father told us to be back home by 10 p.m. not because he's just a bore, but because father is afraid that we're gonna go through a dark street, through dark alley, and all companies, insurance companies, are trying to sell as many policies as possible and to pay as little money as possible. That's the rationale. Yes, you're absolutely right. When we carried out the analysis of the reaction of our citizens, we found out that usually our citizens are content with financial services because financial accessibility inclusion is very high in our country, especially in comparison to other countries. Yes, in terms of fintech, Russia ranks among the first 3 pioneers in terms of fintech, financial technologies, whereas in insurance, almost all citizens claim that they are not content, they're dissatisfied. The insurance companies are still confident they can do all their business on Excel. If your client comes once a year to you, you have to find the line in the Excel table and, just extend the policy. But that's not the case. 60% of big city dwellers buy something online, 25% do that on a daily basis. And if you look at the statistics, only 20% of insurance clients are content with how the app of the insurance companies their clients of works. So 60% of big city dwellers buy something through their portable device, whereas just only 20% are satisfied with insurance apps, mobile apps. And you believe that if you venture into the market as a small company, you'll be able to change the market, to overhaul it. Our agenda is very simple. Let's remember the theme of our panel. It's very simple. The banks have, walked the walk. Over the last 2 decades, they've managed to take off the fraud risk from your banking products. But the Bureau of History is still not working. Over the last year it was launched, but no, it's not functional. I think it should be introduced. And we have to increase the threshold for low-risk insurance as property insurance. Just think, citizens, particularly vulnerable citizens, have their deposits in banks protected. Even investment is insured right now, whereas the main financial assets of households, namely the apartment, is not protected in 90% of cases. In Russia, less than 8% of houses and apartments of individuals are insured. It's perplexing. No, it's not at all. When you are given 56 lists and you've got to, handwrite a description of every picture, everything you've got, you never get to the end of this wonderful questionnaire. So the services is provided in such a way that people simply cannot use that even if they do not want to do that. Yes, the prices are high because we do not have the Bureau of Insurance History, and moreover the insurance industry has not yet asked the government to provide them with the data that will allow us to decrease the costs for the customers. Let's not make our people fill in the questionnaire. Some of the data should be provided by the government bodies. As far as the digital profile is concerned, what do you think the government and national infrastructure bodies have to do to help the insurance industry and vice versa? I think the insurance sector has to use the already existing technologies such as the rapid payment system, the digital profile of our citizen, which is, I'm hopeful, will be very functional while providing safety of personal data, which is very good. We are in the financial sector, as Mr. Kostin said during the first panel. The financial sector is about trust. People have to put trust in the institutions they give their data to. And I certainly believe in an efficient integration of platforms, technological platforms, data platforms conducted by the government and by the private system. As Vladimir has said, these data are transactional, and you can already get these data through the operators of fiscal data, through other sources. I refer to data on property. So far, insurance companies do not have access to these property data, let alone the issue of reconfiguring your apartment space, something very often not registered. This is just reasonable request. You need to have access to a minimum of data. And the citizen has to get the right to provide as much data as he or she wants to whomever they want. We want to manage what the outside world knows of us and about us. Maksut Igorevich, I think this is the new task ahead of us, to have a closer look at the digital profile, not just from the point of view of the financial sector that is already an active user. We have other participants on the market, insurance companies in particular. And, providing digital services to the citizen, that's a very relevant issue. Georgy, so what is the model you will follow? I wish you all success. I do hope your company is going to turn into a big company that will pioneer digitalization in insurance. And what path are you going to take? Will you follow in the footsteps of Vladimir, focusing on your super app, super service? Or will you pursue a broader career? What is your vision in 5 years? Yes, thank you very much for your kind wishes. We work with VTB. This is a startup we have been working on together. I don't think that in a year or in 3 years any one of us is going to wake up in the morning and dream of buying an insurance policy, because this is not a priority. Yes, as customers, we would like to be protected, but we do not want to think about that on an everyday basis. We want someone to do that for us. So speaking about super apps, super services, I think insurance as has to become very accessible, very convenient. And moreover, it should be intertwined into the fabric of our life, in our everyday life, through digital services. We will not break our routine, hailing a cab, or reading a newspaper, but if we can get an insurance for our car for when we use that, and if you get access to this service through your banking app or through the government portal, then it's going to be very convenient. And I think insurance has to become socially accessible and as widespread as possible, and only in the digital form, done with papers. Well, you know, I'm very concerned about you and Vladimir. Yes, thank you for your concern. Yes, I think you've chosen your own path, and I would very much like you to succeed. Yes, and Vladimir and I, we help one another. Yes, for 4 years, Alfa-Bank has been growing the fastest. We had 200,000 legal entities. Right now, we've got 700,000. Right now, the growth this year is 20–25%. You know, in terms of our legal clients and also individual clients, the growth is very good. So far, I think we are succeeding. It's great, and it's great that you do not have like a mantra, and you are happy to venture into the unknown, to think about alternative solutions. You know, some big players have already shown that their model is good and successful, whereas you have to find something new, something that big tech companies cannot provide you with.
Therefore, we, as the Bank of Russia, believe, and I guess I could speak on behalf of the ministry as well, that we want to take on board all the stakeholders. And this would be the prerequisite for the development of a country. Oh, Olga, I'm dreaming that not 1 out of 10, but 5 out of 10 apartments would be insured. So talking about competition, obviously existing insurers were unable to convince potential customers that they're offering good services at a fair price. I mean, the market is open. 99% of clients have no faith in insurance right now, but I'm sure they will change their minds, and they will not only protect their property, their health, or health of their loved ones. By the way, we've insured over 50,000 kids from cancer, and it's part of our social responsibility project. But I think this industry is very likely to grow a few-fold in the upcoming 3 to 5 years, and this will create additional tax revenues for the state, and this will give a boost to digitalization and Fintech development, and it's generally very promising. Colleagues, we did not agree in advance, but we keep talking about 2 very important topics during this discussion. First, we reaffirmed that infrastructure projects we're working on at the state level, together with you, are very much in demand. E-signature, unified biometric system, rapid payment system, they're all in demand. So it looks like we've been going in the right direction for the past 5 years. We didn't miss anything, and we've achieved a lot. There's good progress. But clearly, the existing infrastructure needs to deal with a number of important issues: customer consent and customer data. There are 2 ways I see, 2 ways forward. First would be to task the state to come up with some sort of an infrastructure solution, which will define API standards that will keep consent registry for the benefit of all market players. The second option would be to let the private sector take the lead, and the regulator, the ministry, will introduce legal regulation, legal framework that will be mandatory. Based on my experience, working in the central bank and interacting with different stakeholders shows that market tends to have more faith in the state. Could you briefly comment which path do you think would be best, one of the 2? Maybe you can think of a third option, because it's really relevant for Maksut and I, and your opinion is really important. Well, in terms of data and data availability, the state should be involved, because we're talking about extremely sensitive data, and the state will need to control this data, will need to control the flow of data. As regards format, should it be a joint venture? Should it be public only? I don't know, that's an open question, but the driving force should be the state. I don't think legal format matters at all. It's one of the layers of the platform Rabi mentioned. But there are so many important issues to consider, security-related, ethical questions. So commercial players should have access to those infrastructures, equal access. There should be clear-cut rules of the game. And I think most data should be provided unilaterally. Imagine Google Maps. If they try to collect data from their customers that share data, I mean, we wouldn't use Google traffic. Imagine making banks and insurance companies collect consent from all their users. This will not work. So the data, the most important, the most sensitive data, need to be better protected. There should be obstacles to sharing this data. But anonymized data, data that is not sensitive, should be more openly available, and private companies should be able to create creative, interesting services and products for the benefit of their customers. Georgy, what do you think? Well, I'm always in favor of level playing field, and I myself, as a customer, would like to be able to manage access to my data. I want my data to be properly protected, especially if someone is collecting my data from different sources. I want the state to be involved. As a businessman, I want to have high-quality online access to data I need to create value for end users, to raise efficiency and offer better products, because my customers want to get high-quality products at reasonable price and good data protection. I want the same. But at the same time, we're not only talking about public data, and digital profile covers all the issues you've raised. Another thing is that we need to come up with certain rules of the game through open API that would contain not just public data, but also commercial data. And then the big question is, who will be keeping the registry of consent? I don't want to ask the same question to Maksut, because I figured that Maksut and I will be pretty much in charge of dealing with this task, based on your answers. And I think the main outcome of this session is that not only did we discuss the existing platforms, and issues that we know, now there's a new task ahead of us, to create a new platform, to deal with consent, to decide on how we're going to deal with APIs at the public level, to guarantee equal access to participants, and make sure we provide security of data of our citizens. And this is yet another exceptionally important task. So I have a different question for you, Maksut. Do you think we'll manage? Do you think we will be able to put in place this infrastructure? Because the market needs it now, not in 10 years. I think the market expects this to happen in 12 months max. Well, I'm confident, Olga, that the year 2022 will be very much about data and data management and data regulation. There's a bill under consideration regarding big data, commercial use of big data, whether the state will have a monopoly, whether the state will require business to provide anonymized big data. And the second question you've raised, and for good reason too, is whether users should have the right to manage their own data. We see different models. In China, data belong to the state, in Europe to private companies. But what about people? I can give you a simple example we discuss internally a lot. In this country, a citizen has the right to take his health record from one medical center and take it to another medical center. And it creates freedom. But when you cannot take your data and bring your data to a new service provider, that creates some sort of a digital slavery. So people should be allowed to take their data and bring it from one service provider to another. And I think since we've created this platform to manage public data, I think we just need to add additional functionality. But we need to discuss it with the business community. We need to make sure we decide wisely and find compromise on what kind of data it will be. But the year 2022 will be all about data, and new regulation will be put in place, new platforms will be created. Let me add, says Vladimir, we talk about data a lot, and data is used more and more broadly. And there are more and more scams we encounter, identity theft and other related crime, that are becoming a very relevant problem. So, in addition to the projects we've already discussed, I believe we could consider launching a major project aimed at fighting fraud. We've done a number of projects collecting data about fraudulent schemes. We've launched a video game to educate our customers about existing fraud. So we collect a lot of data, but maybe Ministry of Interior, FSB, Central Bank could create some sort of a high-tech project or a high-tech platform to collect information about fraud, to raise awareness about fraud among individuals. I agree with you, colleagues. We as a regulator are now finalizing our fintech agenda for this period, and we're introducing new priorities on digitalization of the market. So we've achieved a lot in terms of fintech. So one of our priority projects would be setting up a platform for data exchange, introduce data API standards, consent registry, and Vladimir is right. We are considering creating some sort of a platform, like you said, related to cybersecurity. Do a brief poll. It will only take you half an hour, and you will understand how exceptionally relevant it is. It gives me great pleasure, colleagues, that our partners with the corporate sector is very constructive and very amicable, although our opinions oftentimes differ and our functionality differs. Through such open discussions, we find solutions. It's a good example of an open API with mandatory standards. And so far, we've created at least 3 platforms. And the business community is really interested in using them, and it's a great sign of trust to the regulator, to the Ministry of Digital Development, but it also speaks volumes about the high level of interaction between the state and the business community, because we're on the same page in terms of existing needs and tasks and priorities for the nearest future. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Rabi. Indeed, our Indian colleagues have come a long way, and we have a lot to learn from you. But we're trying not to be lagging behind, and at some point we will probably be ahead of you. So all the best to you. Stay proactive and stay safe. Thank you, colleagues. And goodbye.
Bye.